Testing, testing, testing. Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. We're going to give people just maybe 2 minutes to get to join, and then we'll be starting. All right. Good morning, everyone. I think we will get started. It is welcome to the August release webinar. We've got lots of good stuff to talk about today. We've got a huge collection of new features to go through, so I'm excited to go through all of that. I will say before we even start, we're in the common scenario these days of having two meetings going on in the same open concept house. So there's a bit of background noise. I apologize for that. We do what we can. So there we go. We are, of course, releasing today HAPI FHIR 5.1.0 and Smile CDR 2020-08. And this release has the code name of Manticore, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. As always, we'll be going through what's new in both of the new products. We're trying something new today. I'm gonna try and sort of blend the two instead of having HAPI go first and Smile go second, just because there are, of course, lots of features that are common to both. So we'll try that today and see how it goes. And of course, we'll also give you a glimpse into what we're going to be working on for the next quarter. To anyone who is new to these webinars, of course, we do quarterly releases. That means that our previous release was in May. We are, of course, on our August release today, and the next release will be in November, assuming we don't do any point releases between now and then. So that's our rough schedule, and of course, we will be doing one of these webinars again in November. This webinar and lots of the content we produce is licensed under the CC0 license, so feel free to share with your friends. We are recording today. We will be making a link available as soon as our amazing video editors have gone through and cleaned it up. So stay tuned for that. So first off, let's talk a little bit about the name for this release, which we don't usually do, but Manticore is kind of a weird word. I have to be honest, I didn't even know what a Manticore was when it was suggested, but we take turns doing naming here at Smile, so Manticore was what was selected. Thank you, Ken, if I remember correctly, for picking that. Manticore, as it turns out, anyone who is a Dungeons and Dragons player probably knows this name well. Manticore is a mythical beast, actually dates back to ancient Persian art. It is a creature that has a lion's body, dragon wings, and a barbed tail. So this is a pretty badass name. And we can see a picture of one of these. Not to be outdone, of course, medieval Europeans, they also took a liking to the concept of Manticore, and they came up with their own super badass version. These are a couple of pictures, and I don't know, it's actually much less badass. I don't know that I'd want to meet one of these crazy things in a dark alley either, but they're not really quite as fearsome. The European twist on the Manticore apparently was a human face, which I don't, who knows what they were thinking with that. Yeah, let's move on from the name. But that's what a Manticore is. We have not yet named the next release. We'll start with an N. That's all we know yet, but I think we'll know pretty soon what the next release is going to be. So this is our 37th release, which absolutely blows me away. Every time I look at this number, I can't believe that we've been doing this for long enough that we've hit 37 releases. One of the things I drew people's attention to in the May release was the fact that HAPI had passed 104 code contributors, which is a really neat milestone. I went and checked that number out this morning just to see where we were at. And of course, we were at 104 in May, and we're at 118 in August. So I think this just goes to show the level of vibrancy within this community. I mean, if you were to look at a giant open source project like Linux or Firefox, of course, their numbers are hundreds of times that, probably thousands of times that. But for an open source healthcare project, I mean, these are really amazing numbers. And I am super proud and super grateful of the vibrant community that we've got around HAPI FHIR and all the amazing implementers that are out there. One other graph that I just added this morning to this presentation, only because I was asked to produce this for other reasons. This is a little, because we distribute HAPI via the Maven repositories, I get a little bit of statistics out of Maven. And this is the download count for the HAPI, what's called the HAPI FHIR root POM, which will probably not mean something to everyone, but this shows you how many unique times it's been downloaded in a given month. And as you can see, between December and July, it has doubled. Although it was higher than that last year, and that's a common trend for in the Northern Hemisphere winter months for it to go down a little bit. But nonetheless, the project, as you can see, is very much still growing. And in fact, I think the rate of growth is increasing, which is awesome. And probably just reflects the fact that FHIR is getting more and more popular out there, which is cool. So I'm going to start on probably the least exciting announcement of this entire webinar, which is that a cross-site scripting vulnerability was disclosed to us about a month ago. It has been fixed at this point. This affects both the HAPI FHIR test page overlay module, which is you'll know that as the little web UI that powers hapi.fhir.org. This also affects the FHIR web module within Smile CDR, because those are, of course, basically the same product. Only Smiles is a sort of secured version of it. We know that people don't typically use this. In fact, I don't know of anyone who uses this product in any kind of production system. So I know this is not the type of vulnerability that is particularly risky out there. But any XSS vulnerabilities that are found, of course, we do treat very seriously. So we have already patched this. The new release includes that patch. And I will also note there's a CVE number that is coming. We applied for that about a week ago, but I suspect with COVID, the CVE folks are probably a little bit behind, as people tend to be these days. So that will probably be released in the next few days. And of course, a big thanks to Will Davison of NCC Group, who did a responsible disclosure of this vulnerability. We always very much appreciate that. And I do want to stress that we take these things super seriously. So thank you to anyone who is doing security research around our products. We do love these types of things. So with that ugliness out of the way, let's talk about the good stuff that's coming in this new release. First off, so the EMPI, which was of course added to both of our products within the last release, has now, work is continuing. In fact, work is accelerating these days. We're starting to see people testing it out, people deploying it, people planning out deployments, which is really exciting. A few enhancements that have been done in the last quarter over the EMPI MPI module include phonetic indexing. So this is phonetic algorithms for matching things like names and accounting for typos. Asynchronous matching, which is awesome, means that we can be generating links and checking links in the background instead of slowing down processing. We've added a bunch of operations for doing the types of administration that you have to do on any MPI, going in and manually checking links and updating links and removing links and that type of thing. As well as a batch operation that works in the background to go through and wipe links and rerun our linking algorithms, which of course is a common sort of workflow if you're trying to implement any MPI and figure out what your algorithm should be. So these are all exciting things. And of course, work continues on the MPI. So I am sure I'll be announcing even more things at the next webinar in terms of where we're going with that module. The thing that I am personally most excited about, this is probably not the thing that will get everyone excited today, but I think it's super cool, and I'm sure there are people that will find this incredibly useful, are what I'll call NPM package support. So FHIR, of course, distributes implementation guides, IGs, and these are things like, we're working with tons of people these days that are implementing the Karen Blue Button IG, for example, which is a specification for basically patient-facing APIs to power apps. And the Karen Blue Button IG includes a giant whack load of electronic artifacts that can be used to do validation of your data to make sure that you're actually producing data that is conformant to that IG. And all of that is done automatically. FHIR decided somewhere around a year ago that the NPM package format would be used to distribute this content. JavaScript developers will be very familiar with NPM packages. Java developers will know them as the JavaScript equivalent to Maven. They sort of work in the same way. NPM is a really neat system, and it was chosen, I think it was a good choice actually for FHIR to take. NPM does include dependencies, and of course FHIR packages have dependencies. The API is quite straightforward. The package contents are quite straightforward as well. So it is definitely a very good sort of selection for that. What we have added to our products today, or as of this release rather, is the ability for you to automatically import these NPM packages into your server and use them for validation. This includes the ability to, on startup, either fetch them from a remote package server, and that includes packages.phir.org, or could include a local package registry that you're running for your enterprise. It also includes the ability for you optionally to ingest all of the contents, all the structure definitions and value sets and all that good stuff into your repository if you'd like to actually make it searchable by your users. Either way, it will be available to the validator. So this is just an awesome way of getting all your validation content in. And to anyone who is anywhere on the journey of implementing any IG, and specifically to everyone who is looking at implementing the CMS ONC directive APIs, this is going to be super useful to you as we roll it out in our next release. To anyone who is using Smile CDR, we've taken that a step farther. Smile now includes a package server on its own. So this is a brand new feature. We have yet to see sort of what adoption will look like, but I'm expecting it's going to be fairly popular in large enterprises, which is really where we're targeting this feature. The package server, of course, will allow you to use Smile as an NPM server and designate, maybe a VM or a little corner in your Docker farm or however you deploy things, to serving up NPM packages to all of the developers across your organization and to all of the servers across your organization. This is really useful, of course, in an enterprise context because you don't want to be fetching packages that you're relying on, especially in production systems, from servers that are outside your control. So bringing that in-house is always a good thing. And having a local server is awesome. And if you've got Smile CDR deployed today, of course, you will automatically be able to add a module, which is an NPM package server, and then roll that out, which is great. Another thing I'm pretty excited about is we've been working with an ongoing partnership with the Lister Hill National Center for Biomedical Computing. I'm hoping I'm remembering that acronym right. I think I am. who have been really interested in sort of pushing the boundaries of the FHIR spec itself. We've been working with them to implement the last N operation, which is a FHIR operation against observation resources, which does really cool things. You can effectively, the use case for this is I've got a collection of lab codes and I'm interested in a patient. I want to find the last, let's say 20 or the most recent 20 observations across all of those different lab codes. For whatever patient. And this is very useful if you're drawing up, for example, flow sheets or dashboards, tables of values, that type of thing. There's reasons why the existing FHIR APIs without last N make that kind of a clunky thing that I don't want to get into here because we'll spend way too much time on it. Last N allows you to super quickly, and the performance of this is just incredible, actually. Bring up a whole bunch of clinical data. So the team over at LHN CBC have built this amazing sort of proof of concept flow sheet application that hasn't yet been reworked to take advantage of this operation, but I know they're planning on doing that soon now that we've built that. Last N takes advantage of Elasticsearch 6, which is a little bit clunky. Anyone who has implemented Elasticsearch for HAPI or for Smile will know that we, in any other part of the library, cannot go any higher than Elasticsearch 5. So this is a bit clunky, requiring two different versions of Elasticsearch. This is unfortunately because of a limitation of the Hibernate search library that we're using. But our experience in getting this done, our positive experience with Elasticsearch 6 has been so positive that we're really strongly considering at this point dropping support for Hibernate search and Lucene entirely and just using Elasticsearch 6 for any of the full text stuff that we want to do. So that's likely the direction we're going to go. I will note that this hasn't been turned on in Smile yet, just because we still have, I think, a little bit of integration work and a little bit of stress testing to do before I think this is enterprise ready. But that is definitely coming soon. And if anyone is interested in testing that and is a Smile customer, we would really like to hear from you. And that'll help us sort of prioritize that work. Other stuff worth mentioning. So FHIR patch. This is a pretty nerdy part of the FHIR spec, but the developers will love this one. FHIR patch is a mechanism for effectively applying diffs against FHIR resources. You could think of this like, let's say I want to change the status of a medication order from scheduled to in progress. Actually, I'm not sure those are the right statuses, but let's say they are. The patch allows you to do that as a little tiny document that just changes the status without sending a snapshot in. For a long time now, we have supported the XML patch and JSON patch specs, but FHIR patch is way more expressive than that. It's a really cool specification. It takes advantage of the FHIR path specification to do that and works in all kinds of ways. So FHIR patch is now fully supported. You can do it standalone. You can do it inside transaction operations. So very useful stuff. And I know developers who've been working against our snapshot builds have already started using it and are in love with this operation. So I suspect we'll hear more about how much people like FHIR patch. One thing we've added, which is almost the inverse of FHIR patch, which I think is pretty neat, is this new diff operation. So the diff operation allows you to take, for example, two different resources or two versions of the same resource. And by default, if you just pointed at a resource, it'll compare the most recent version with the next most recent version. And it produces a diff. So it tells you what's changed between those two resources or those two versions of a resource. The output of that is a FHIR patch, in fact. So what you actually get is this nice automated ability to generate FHIR patches. And of course, you can apply those FHIR patches just as easily now that we've got support for both of those. So that's a super useful thing. This is going to be super popular. I know people have been asking for years for this from Smile CDR. And we finally have operationalized it, and I'm really excited about this. We now have a private Docker registry that can be used to automatically import our Docker builds into your Docker infrastructure, into your Kubernetes infrastructure, however you're deploying. So we now do have that. We've also, for that matter, we've got a new download server for the non-Docker builds as well. This is a server that you can hit with wget scripts or however you're scripting your deployments. I know that was not possible with the previous download infrastructure, and that annoyed lots of people. So those days are over. We've now got modern download infrastructure. Hoorah! GraphQL is another thing I'm thinking is pretty fun. We've spent put a bunch of work into beefing up our support for GraphQL, which only continues to get more popular as more developers flock to the FHIR ecosystem. A couple of these I will point out are actually community contributions, and certainly we're always very grateful to that. GraphQL queries, most importantly, and this is kind of most interesting to me around the GraphQL layer, GraphQL queries were kind of an odd sidecar thing before. They didn't participate in any of the security infrastructure that we had, and most importantly, they didn't play well with the authorization interceptor, which meant that if you were using GraphQL on a secured server, you had to either write your own security, or more likely you'd write some authentication and wouldn't use GraphQL if you had individual user authorization needs. That is no longer the case. It is fully possible for you to authorize GraphQL in such a way that if somebody tries to come up with a graph that dives into a resource that they shouldn't have access to, that will be blocked, which is great. Of course, security is good. So that has been added. A couple of other minor things as well. We now support posting GraphQL queries. Previously, they had to go on the URL in a GET, so that's been added. And OR lists in a search, which is a pretty basic feature of FHIR more generally, but is kind of a niche part of the GraphQL spec, has now been implemented as well. We've made a number of enhancements to the terminology services in the product. I was saying in the May release that we completely reworked all of the terminology service APIs internally. And this created a lot of churn for people and was really a bit of a nightmare of a project on our side because it was such a wide-reaching change. But we did this in order to make it easier for us to iterate on terminology services and validation and quickly add new features. And this is the very first thing we've done that has taken advantage of that rework. And we did it really quickly, which I think has absolutely proven that the approach worked. The terminology services built into HAPI FHIR and Smile CDR now natively support UCOM, which is codes for units of measure, as well as BCP 13 and ISO 4217 and 3166, which of course the propeller heads on the call, and I count myself among them, will recognize as the MIME type list, the currency codes list, and the country codes list. For anyone doing international IG development, this is quite useful stuff. We do, of course, and this wasn't terribly difficult, but worth pointing out, we do, of course, also now support the USPS state code value set as well, which was a bit of the thorn in the side of anyone trying to validate US core content. So that's been done as well. Also, through ongoing work with Loink, we have upgraded to support the new Loink 2.68 release format on our terminology server, which is good. It seems like Loink every once in a while will add columns and remove columns from their release format, which sometimes breaks our uploader. We do support the latest release of Loink once again, which is good. A pair of infrastructure changes that have come in. Neither of these are user visible to anyone, but they're both really exciting for anyone who is developing against HAPI FHIR or Smile CDR today. We have implemented a new batch framework. So the batch framework is for in the background executing long-running jobs. HAPI FHIR and Smile today have a number of these long-running jobs that did not use a unified framework before. Things like generating bulk export files, or re-indexing all of your resources, or running an EMPI rework batch to regenerate links, all of those types of things. These are all background tasks. Previously, there was very little visibility other than by poring over server logs into what was going on with these batch jobs. The new framework will allow us to do this in a unified way and hopefully soon provide dashboards that actually give visibility into what the server is doing behind the scenes and potentially allow you to cancel jobs and reschedule jobs and things like that, which is all super useful. So we've only just gotten started with this framework. The bulk export module uses it. It is, I think, the only module. Actually, I think the MPI uses it as well. But we will see lots of other stuff getting reworked to use this framework over the coming months, I'm sure. Even more into the nuts and bolts, we have migrated everything in our unit tests from JUnit 4 to JUnit 5. Which has no impact to users of the library, but is really exciting to me. It occurs to me as I say this, I was going to, for this webinar, give you guys a count of how many unit tests are in the entire project because it is a really staggering number, but I forgot to do that. So I'm going to do that in November, and we'll talk a little bit more about unit tests because we have a lot of them. This is a little tiny thing in Smile CDR, but it has been annoying people. Anyone who's tried to restart a module with the server running has occasionally run into a bug where the module actually did restart correctly, but it reported that it had failed to restart, and this was super annoying. That has been fixed, and I don't usually point out such a trivial bug fix, but I know this has been really annoying to a few people, so that is fixed now, which is good. We have continued to develop the MongoDB repository as well as an alternative to the relational database. We now support conditional writes, which is conditional create and conditional update. And they're completely safe to use even under high sort of multi-threaded behavior. So even if you're doing conditional creates and conditional updates against the same patient, for example, in lots of concurrent threads, we're now enforcing uniqueness properly using a unique index. So it should be possible for you to do this and not create duplicates in Mongo, which is good. We've also implemented support for OR searching, which is a fairly basic FHIR feature, but was missing. And a bunch of enhancements to our support for token search parameters as well. So Mongo continues to get better and better as an alternative to the relational support. Another fairly big one on the Smile CDR side, we have upgraded our JavaScript engine. So Smile CDR users will know that many of the API extension points allow you to program in JavaScript. This can be done for things like security scripts and authorization scripts and mapping scripts for HL7v2 mapping, all of that type of thing. In previous releases, we were limited to ECMA script or JavaScript 5, which meant you couldn't use a bunch of the nice features in 6, like the let keyword and the const keyword and all kinds of other good stuff that are in there. We have migrated from Nashorn as a JavaScript engine to the new Growl VM. I actually have no idea how it's pronounced, but I assume it's Growl VM. Growl is an incredible JavaScript library. It's actually they call it a polyglot library. It supports a number of languages other than JavaScript, although JavaScript is the only language we're using yet. It performs incredibly well, supports ECMA script 6, and could allow us actually in the future to have bindings to other languages as well. Growl supports Ruby and Python, and all kinds of other good things. So we may well start adding support for scripting in other languages as well to the product at some point if people want that. I will quickly close, just because we're almost out of time, with a note about what's coming up in the next quarter. And I don't have much here, actually. I'll talk about why in a second. We continue our partnership with Loink. We're now working on beefing up the terminology server to allow multiple versions of the same code system to be uploaded. So potentially uploading multiple versions of Loink or multiple versions of SNOMED CT or whatever the thing is you're doing. You can then do searches and expansions and lookups and all the validations, all that good stuff, and specify which version of the code system you're actually trying to validate or expand or whatever. So this will be super useful stuff for sure. One module that's being built into Smile CDR that we're quite excited. We've just kicked this project up. About 2 weeks ago, we just started development on this. This is a module we're calling real-time export. Real-time export is going to be effectively, what's the quick way of saying this? A common challenge, of course, with FHIR repositories. The FHIR model is awesome for representing data. It's great for building systems against it if you're trying to build apps or interchanges or any of that type of thing. But the one challenge, if you've got a bunch of data in FHIR, is that many of the common sort of reporting and analytics tools, they expect a more traditional SQL model. If you've got traditional analytics tools, maybe you've got a Tableau visualization engine or something, all of those things, they want to be able to talk to traditional, very denormalized SQL databases. And of course, you can't sort of do that out of the box with our product. That is changing. So what we're doing is introducing a feature called real-time export. Real-time export is going to allow you to effectively build a data lake that sits next to your operational FHIR store that is in a traditional denormalized relational format, friendly to all of the analytics tools you want to use, and have that kept up to the date, hopefully up to date, up to the minute, maybe even up to the second accurate against what's in your database automatically. We're thinking this is going to be super useful. We are going to make it very customizable, so you can choose what attributes you want to keep up to date and how often you want to keep them up to date and all of that good stuff. So more to come on this. I'm suspecting we'll give you lots of details in the next webinar about how real-time export works. That's about the end of the new features in this. And I will say we have a number of other things planned, but our planning process is a little bit behind, so I don't have too much to say about those things until we finalize those plans. We've also got a number of projects that are just about to be signed, and I can't talk about them yet because of that. But let's just say I've talked about two of the things I know are coming. There's a ton of other stuff that I know is coming as well. I'm going to close here. Thank you, everyone. Stay healthy, stay safe. We'll see how long it takes before we get to a post-COVID world. There are a lot of changes. I think I've actually talked about a quarter of what's in these new releases. So do check out the change logs if you're curious. I'm going to leave you guys with a photo that I took about 2 weeks ago of one of my favorite places on Earth. This is the shores of Lake Erie, specifically Long Point Provincial Park here in Ontario, Canada, where we're based. I think this is probably the most underrated beach in Ontario, in Canada, maybe, who knows. It is an absolutely beautiful place. To anyone who lives within driving distance of the North Shore of Lake Erie, I would highly recommend checking it out. It's just awesome there. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in 3 months.